Hey there, welcome back to The Empowered Edge, the podcast where we cut through the noise, ditch the overwhelm, and unlock your best self through optimal health, a resilient mindset, and habits that actually last. I'm your host, Jenna Hostetler, registered dietitian, certified neurocoach, and proud obsessor of all things psychology and leadership. Every week, you'll get practical, science-backed strategies that give you the clarity and confidence to take action, break through barriers, and most importantly, own your health, own your life, and live with purpose. If you've been cutting foods left and right trying to fix your gut, this episode may give you that final piece you've been looking for. Today I'm joined by holistic nutritionist Bonnie Weisner, and we're diving into why gut health is about so much more than what's on your plate. From stress and sleep to how and when you eat, we are breaking down the overlooked factors that could be keeping you stuck. Whether you're dealing with IBS, bloating, or just want better energy, this episode will shift your perspective and your strategy. Let's dive in. Today we have Bonnie Weisner with us. Bonnie is a registered holistic nutritionist, the creator of the Shift Your Gut Therapy method, and the founder of Shift Nutrition and Wellness. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Jenna. It's my pleasure to sit and talk with you today. Thank you for having me.
So, we're definitely seeing in the US and Canada both, a lot more people with gut issues and having trouble. And I think I even saw that there's more people with gut problems than heart problems, which is kind of crazy. So, is there a genetic component to that? What is, is that passed down through lifestyle? What is going on with the gut surge lately?
Such a great question. I think a lot of aspects of specifically a North American lifestyle do have, unfortunately, a negative impact on our gut function and health. But the percentage, it's pretty high, like close to 10 to anywhere between 10 and 13% of the adult population is thought to have digestive impairment, specifically something like IBS, which is very, very high. And you're right, that statistic regarding or comparing to cardiovascular issues has to do with people who, let's say, enter a medical environment with complaint, like emergency departments. So that's pretty high. That is significant, right? And in North America, anyways, I think that can be traced out back to a number of things. Certainly genetics play a role, but as we've come to learn overall with respect to like nutrigenomics and like the role that, diet and lifestyle can have on even influencing the expression of or genetic expression, I would probably lean in towards diet and lifestyle as the root cause or root issue to discuss here.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you think about it too, you can pass down genes, but you teach your kids what you learned. So it's really lifestyle habits and thoughts and beliefs that get passed down along with everything else. So yeah. Let's talk about how we eat and the effect that can have on our gut and digestion. Because eating is like one of the most complex things that our body does. It takes all of our senses. It takes so many different functions all happening at once. So can we talk about like mindful eating for a minute? Like what even is that actually? And how does it impact your gut health?
Sure. That's such a good question. So mindful eating isn't just sort of being aware of what you're putting on your plate. Many of us in this day and age, my children are the first, young adults to attest to this. We sit with our device and we eat. We sit in front of a computer screen and we eat. We're rushing from meeting to meeting. Many people are eating in their cars. And we sort of take for granted that it's such an automated process. Besides the food enjoyment, we just get the job done, right? But in reality, digestion is a cascade. So if we're missing out on specific early steps of digestion because we're rushing around, like a simple example of that is, let's say, not chewing your food properly. So they actually used to teach people to chew their food. Like literally, that was something that children learned in elementary schools. One of my older clients was explaining that to me. But learning to chew your food properly, most of us don't. And chewing is the first step in digestion. It's the mechanical first step. And by doing that, it sort of facilitates the rest of the digestive cascade. It's the first step in breakdown. So if you're not doing that properly because you're not mindful, you're not sitting and actually concentrating on your meal, you're rushing around from this thing to the next. Chewing is just an example, of course, the rushing is the other part of it. Then your body really isn't in a state to digest optimally, because either, as I said, you're missing important steps. So food goes down, your trachea and into and your esophagus and into your stomach, not actually processed enough at that point. That's one thing, and that sort of starts maybe a less positive cascade. Like things maybe go awry from there. But another reason why it's not great to sort of not be mindful and sit in the moment and be conscientious around sitting and enjoying your meal is because your body, if you're on your device and you're getting a note from your boss, telling you missed a deadline, for example, or your husband's, texting you, giving you heck for something or whatever, you're really your nervous system is in an agitated state. And by design, our body actually downregulates digestion, all processes of digestion, in favor of stress. So that if your body's engaged in a stressful response, you won't be digesting optimally. So for the average person, it's a good practice to eat mindfully and slowly and enjoy your meal and really nourish yourself in the moment, like spiritually and physically, for all kinds of reasons. And for the average person, without any digestive complaints or issues, perhaps doing the things I just described once in a while or even frequently doesn't impact their digestion as readily. But specifically, if you're someone who's already dealing with impairment, there's something already going on that is not optimal. One area that is cost free. Everybody can do it. You don't need training. You don't need to know like which food and what food and whatever. Start by just actually being in the moment and sitting and chewing your food properly and helping your system, basically enhancing digestion so that as things go through, perhaps things will run a little smoother. It's very simplistic, but it's a massive, massive action, actually. For people who are really struggling, it can make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, if you're like, people joke about I'm just gonna inhaling food, but if you're, eating stuff like, mac and cheese or applesauce or soup, and it just kind of goes down, your body's not ready, it's not prepared because it didn't spend any time in your mouth, and then your stomach has all this work to do.
Yeah, and our bodies are really just homeostatic and always seeking balance and to do the right thing. Our body knows what to do. Our bodies typically aren't broken. We kind of interfere and sometimes break the process up. But like just in the example I gave you, something fundamental is in our saliva, there's an enzyme called amylase that starts to break down carbohydrates when the food's in your mouth. So again, if you don't give it enough time, or if that isn't initiated, it definitely interferes with the whole step one, 2 through 8 or whatever. If you miss step one, it's very, very important. And I don't think people realize how important it is because, as you know, I mean, you and I chatted about this before recording at some point when we first spoke. A lot of people who struggle in this area, obviously, it's understandable, spend a lot of time trying to worry about and figure out what food did I eat that didn't agree with me. And on Tuesday, they can have quinoa, and on Saturday, quinoa completely sets their system off, right? So it's likely not the quinoa in that scenario, but this is a lot of time spent and a lot of nerves spent trying to figure this out. And sometimes it is the food, of course, for that particular person. But most of the time, it's that our body is just not, like you said, ready to do the job that it's designed to do because it's missed a step or a variety of other reasons.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that people can implement next time they eat. It's not like you don't need an appointment, you don't need to do more research, you don't need to go to the grocery. You just gotta
Yeah,
chew your food a lot more and think about it as you're doing it.
yeah. Pay attention to how you're eating. How you're eating is really fundamentally as important as what you're eating when it comes to these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So in all of your working with your people, with your clients, and talking about, the stress and and how to make, I guess, okay, one thing is always, making the meal prep and eating the foods that people should eating, making that less of a stressor and less of a challenge so that you're more apt to do it. But then what also about just mealtime in general? I mean, if your mealtime routine is stressful, you're going to sit down at the table and you're going to be so stressed and you're already kind of set up for failure. So what
Yeah,
are some tips or things that you've helped people kind of figure out to make your meal times actually enjoyable with your family?
that's a terrific idea, a terrific question also. And I do spend time talking to people about this as well. And it's something that, again, we don't focus on when we're trying to figure out the problem, right? You have IBS, you're struggling. One day you have diarrhea, next day you have constipation. Some people don't even know if they can rely on themselves to leave their house. So obviously, a lot of people are focusing on what they should eat and what they did wrong and whatever. And instead, this is an opportunity, again, to make a small, maybe a little more effortful, um, um, spend time with something like planning your meals, figuring out, because if you don't plan ahead, I think this is what you're getting at, right, Jenna? Like this is what you're talking about. If you don't plan ahead, um, first of all, you're going to eat quickly because you're rushing around to like prepare the food for your family, perhaps, or for yourself, right? So you don't even allow yourself the space and time to sit down and just enjoy a meal. You're already running in the door from work, kind of quickly pulling something together. Oh, gee, I forgot to defrost chicken. We've all been there, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole spiral begins again, getting us into that sympathetic nervous mode instead of the rest and digest mode, which is what we need to be in to sit and enjoy a meal. So I do. I ask people very simply. It doesn't have to be complicated meals, but even start with, um, you know, going through your recipes and picking a roster for your family of, let's say, 10 meals that for dinner. We're talking dinner mostly, right? That everybody can enjoy together. Because if you have little kids, we also know what that's like, right? Like two people in your family will eat it, two people won't, et cetera. And that creates a whole other spiral. But there's a lot of stress reduction, just knowing what you're going to put on the table, being fairly certain that everybody's going to enjoy it. So it requires advanced thought and planning, and sometimes even prepping. Like I said, if you have it planned in advance, the chicken will have likely been defrosted, possibly even been batch cooked and frozen, right? So you're just defrosting it the morning you go out to work. I mean, this is very, very basic, but often overlooked, right? So it's basic in the sense that we all know that we know the words, like we know we should be doing this or we think we should be doing this, but people are often not doing this. And I think that the big, big aha there is just that, again, in doing this, you reduce the stress. You just put yourself into eating and enjoying mode, not rushing around mode. And again, from the point of view of optimized digestion, that's really, really important. So, and not, of course, there's the other aspect to this, which is when you're not rushing, you have dinner at home, you're not necessarily running through a drive-through on your way home, you're making more nutritious, better, healthy choices also as a result.
Mhm. And a lot of times people are so worried about or so focused on what can I eat? What should I avoid? What's going to make this worse? And I know one thing that you really focus on is what do we do instead? Instead of, always telling your kid no, 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 tell them do this instead. So what are some big tips that you tell your people to just start doing?
Okay, so this is also one of my favorite topics, but the reason it is because, as I said, my heart goes out to people. I myself have a history of Crohn's disease, so I know what it's like. I really remember clearly when I was struggling and having like an acute flare up. All you want to do is avoid food. You think food is the devil when you're in that kind of discomfort and pain, and it's natural. So in flare ups, I understand, but on the regular, um, a lot of focus is still in our circles put on, in nutrition circles even, put on, things we should avoid, right? I mean, I hate to go there, but like the low FODMAP diet, for example, is a dietary protocol that is very, very evidence-based. So we can't question the research behind it, but it's incredibly focused on a pretty extreme list of foods, healthy foods that people need to not eat. And I just want to address that separately for a second and say that because that is the most common advice you'll get about food, walking out of, a doctor's office or a GI's office, literally a piece of paper that says, here, try the low FODMAP diet, as if that's the easiest thing in the world, which of course, anyone who's tried it knows it's really not. It's a bit complicated, right? And difficult. You're nodding. But the other thing is that, and again, I went off on a tangent here. I hope you don't mind, but it's important because so many people are turning to that protocol for relief, symptom relief. And as I said, it is evidence-based and done properly, you can reduce your symptoms. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it doesn't really get to the root of the issue necessarily always. But more importantly, my criticism of it is not so much, obviously, the diet itself, because as I've mentioned twice now, it is the best diet we have from an evidentiary point of view, but it's highly abused, meaning it was only ever intended to be like a 6 to 8 week diagnostic tool, really, to help provide a little bit of short-term relief while figuring out, what needs to be done or whatever. And people I've had clients come to me who are on it for almost 5 years, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and we know, well, on and off and on and off. And we know now that the fact is that people, not doing that under guidance. So typically, if you do that kind of protocol, the low FODMAP specifically, in my opinion, you should reach out to a registered dietitian or a nutritionist who's very familiar with that protocol and what the steps are. Because coming off of it also requires supervision and observation. But that's like one dietary measure that people often turn to. What was your original question? Sorry.
What to do and not to do.
Right, sorry. And then there's other elimination protocols. I even in my work have an approach that requires some short-term elimination, but again, it's overseen by me. The observations, the guidance, very, very, very important. But what I usually focus on with people is not what you shouldn't do. So avoid these foods because X, Y, and Z, because it's often not the food. It's our body's lack of capacity for digestion. So something in that process or cascade is impaired or not working in the assembly line. And figuring that out is paramount. But what I do instruct people to do is to actually focus on doing the things nutritionally and lifestyle wise that we know can help repair or optimize digestion. So on the food front, we're talking about specifically two things. Optimizing variety. So don't eat the same thing every day. And of course, anybody who's listening who struggles knows that's a difficult one. It sounds so easy. Food variety. Go to the grocery store, switch it up every week, go to whatever. But the truth is that we know that when you're struggling with these symptoms, if you're constipated, if you're running with bouts of diarrhea and constipation, if you have gas, if you have heartburn, oftentimes people end up reducing their diet so much because they're trying to figure out which foods are actually causing the problem, right? And unfortunately, that further reinforces the problem because we need to have dietary variety in order for our body to do the work it needs to do in all respects, including here. But more important than that, there's a ton of research over the last, I would say, 5 years that really strongly advocates and supports the idea that we need to have specifically variety of plant fiber. So fiber is the second. So variety and fiber are the two things that I ask people to really focus on enhancing their diet with. Most North Americans get less than 15 grams of fiber a day, and that's being generous with the standard North American diet, right? And at a minimum, we're supposed to get the guidelines, both in Canada and the US anyways, call for somewhere between 25 and 35 grams, I believe. So we're already kind of below what we're supposed to get. And the reason this is so important is because having what is considered a balanced microbiome, so our gut bacteria being in balance, is considered a very important foundation for gut health and for overall health, actually. And the way to do that is to nourish our gut bacteria with good plant fiber. That's what it feeds off of. So again, it sounds, I don't know if it sounds simple or complicated. To me, it sounds simple because I talk about it all the live long day. But in reality, what that means is, every time you go to the grocery store, usually all of us go with a list and it's like, thinking of the meal planning thing. It's always like, we know our kids eat cucumbers. It's like the same five vegetables, let's face it, right? That we all kind of get drawn to. Some of them we walk by in the store, we don't even know necessarily what they are. So it does require a little bit of effort, but like, hey, I haven't bought bok choy in a long time. Or what can I do with that bag of already shredded, easy to manage cabbage, right? And like, these are things that maybe aren't on your regular grocery list, but trying to introduce variety every week. The research actually that was done, this is going to blow your mind because I don't even know if I get to this number, is based on like optimal would be 30 different plants a week. A week? Yeah, a week. So, I mean, that includes grain.
Okay. Let's think about this real quick. So it's eating four foods, four different plants every day, and every day they're different.
Exactly. It's a
Or
lot,
like,
right?
that's a lot.
It's a lot. And you know what? Guidelines being guidelines, right? So meaning that does it really have to be like that every day? Like I don't want people to get neurotic about it. I
That
certainly
right?
don't, right? Because that's how this information is often taken. But 30 plants a week is a lot. So think of grains. You can have oats, you can have rye, you can have wheat, you can have, like that kind of thing, right? Look, we're cheating. Like we're not cheating, but like we're making it a little easier. Amaranth, like actually, I love for people to experiment with different grains because, of course, wheat is the one that most of us turn to the most often, and of course, it's the most processed and the most sprayed and the most probably unhealthy the way that we eat it. And it's not a question of like this particular conversation isn't necessarily about gluten or not gluten. I'm just about variety. So, plant variety is the second, probably most like fiber, sorry, is the most important thing in that conversation and variety. And then I would add one more thing to that actually. Um, Depending on what you're struggling with, you know, IBS doesn't always come, as we know, with inflammation. But if you have impaired gut function or if you have a hyperpermeable gut where, the timing of when the tight gut junctions open and close might not be completely working as they should, and stuff's going into your bloodstream, maybe not fully broken down, that could be the reason for some of the reactions, right? The symptoms that somebody's having. So, the third thing that I was going to say, and that causes an inflammatory response very often. So, the third thing that I was going to actually mention were things like fermented foods. So, again, not just because of, well, yes, because of bacterial diversity again. So, contributing to that. So, we're talking about things like, yogurt. I mean, who doesn't eat yogurt, sauerkraut, and I say that to my people a lot, and they're like, and my husband is even like, "What is that? Jar in the fridge kind of thing?" But like a small tablespoon of sauerkraut is so replete with good bacteria. So those, kefir, like those types of things are really, really important to include in our diet intentionally kind of throughout the week, right? And there was research actually done at, I can't remember which, Stanford. I think it was last summer. They concluded this research that actually did finally prove that fermented foods actually had a positive impact on inflammation. So they were definitely anti-inflammatory. It's something that's been discussed probably for decades without like solid research behind it. And now we have the research to support that. So I think that's another really important factor. And also fairly easy, like it's easy pickles, like it's easy to find one thing. You may not like the whole list because a lot of these foods are different, tempeh, whatever, to necessarily what people are putting in their grocery cart all the time. But even just finding one or two that you like and trying to string it through your diet. Like, again, don't be worried about it. Like, don't do it with like concern and worry. Do it just strategically to make things better.
Yeah. So when, initially when I heard you say, tons of variety, 30 foods a week, my mind is like, oh my gosh, how can you do that? But then when you start talking about, things like sauerkraut and things like yogurt and all the really good foods that stay around for a while. I mean, you can go to the grocery and if you only need, one or two spoonfuls of sauerkraut at a time, then that jar can last you for weeks.
Yeah,
And
and not only that, but like I know we all get on our high horse about like food quality and buying organic this and buying organic that, and you can have that conversation. But in reality, you don't have to have a big budget. 30 plants a week is a lot. Like I said, I don't even know if I get that every week. I really don't. I try and do the things I'm saying and get like as much plant variety as I can. But let's face it, picture an individual who's living alone, right? I mean, nobody wants to deal with food waste, even if you can afford to. It's wasteful. So, but buying frozen vegetables of different varieties takes care of that problem right away. I mean, you can buy everything frozen. You can buy kale, you can buy mixed vegetables, you can buy virtually right cauliflower. I throw cauliflower into smoothies. Like if you really put your mind to it, it's easier than you think. And again, not to dwell on it because I know some people might have snobby attitudes towards frozen vegetables, but I think I used to. But the reality is that it's a really efficient way of doing what I just suggested.
sure, and yeah, you can talk about, quality and frozen versus canned versus non-organic, but at the end of the day, if it's a step towards making you do it, it's better than not doing it at all.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, there is no real significant difference between like nutrient wise between like frozen and
Not
fresh.
frozen.
So if it makes someone's life easier, or like, I mean, I was thinking when I was thinking of that suggestion, I was thinking like, okay, 4 to 5 different vegetables a day. That actually isn't so easy. But if you saute, let's say you're going fresh, you saute a bunch of, I don't know, bok choy or kale or something at the beginning of the week, and you put it in your fridge, right? And then you mix up, I don't know, some carrots and zucchini and broccoli, whatever. And like right there, you've got 4 that you can access, right? In that particular day, or like just change different ones. But the frozen one I really like for trying to get the numbers up. And fruit also, right? Fruit counts too. So we buy, you got bananas on your list, you got some berries, right? So trying to mix up fruits. Fruit is part of that 30 in a week as well. That makes it a little easier for people, I think, right? Imagine like the little mandarin oranges. Those are easy to have every day or whatever. Like, yeah, you have to put your mind to it for sure because and some people might, you might be even more than halfway there already if you've got a good variety in your diet. But from a strategic perspective, from a what can we do to actually enhance perspective, those are things that we can do to enhance.
And if you think about it too, when we go back to, the stressful mealtime preparation, imagine if you go to the store with the intention of 30 plant options and then you open your fridge any given moment and you have things to choose from. It's like, ugh,
Right.
there's nothing to eat. Ugh, I had that yesterday. Like you have options and it makes throwing a meal together super easy because you can just, here's some salad, here's some veggies, here's some meat, we're good to go.
Yeah. And I mean, all of those things, you throw some hummus on a wrap and throw a bunch of mixed veggies in. Um, it's a great meal, right? It's like it's just not what people are typically used to. I mean, I definitely have some clients who come to me already doing a great job at that. They might be more plant-based to begin with. And this, by the way, is not a statement for or against animal protein or having a varied diet in that way at all. I think whatever works for you is totally cool. I just think this is an enhancement.
So, along that note, can you talk a little bit about kind of your philosophy on eating for life and not for a diet?
Um, Okay. So what's interesting to me about that is it depends what perspective what like screen you put on it, right? Because I'm not a big believer in diets, and I guess it depends on how people view that word. But for me, that always means temporary. The way that we use it in our society, anyways, usually means temporary. So I don't know if people set out to sort of find a diet and it becomes temporary. It depends on what goal usually is, but temporary is usually not a great idea. I think we need to eat for our life stage also. So, what you give a 6-year-old and what you give a 46-year-old woman might need to look a little differently. And I remark on that only because it is interesting if you stop and think of it. Like, again, in North America, we don't really vary our diet that much from like our 20s to our 50s even, right? But we might have different needs. Your activity level might change. There's a million different lifestyle inputs that could dictate a change requirement to diet. Eating for your life instead of for, a diet, a prescribed diet, means just that. It means taking into account the things that you should judge your diet by, in my opinion, are your energy level. So are you waking up in the morning actually feeling rested? I know that could speak to sleep quality as well, but sleep quality could be impacted by whether or not your diet is, the right one for you also, the way you're eating. So definitely I would use energy as a major barometer on whether the way that you're eating is good for you, energy long term. And also, people don't, I often say that, let's say you're talking about someone who's sort of mostly eating a standard North American diet. They feel the way they feel and they don't really notice that they don't feel well, right? And then they go on and they change things. I see this all the time. And it's so incremental sometimes that, again, they don't really notice necessarily that they're feeling a lot better. I mean, if you have symptom reduction and you're dealing with something therapeutic, oftentimes you do notice those things. But what I'm talking about is like the sleep, the energy, the mood, like all these things. It's a little ethereal. You don't really click into that. However, when you perhaps go back to eating the way you used to or have some crap for dinner, right? All of a sudden it strikes you like, oh my God, I actually always used to feel like this, right? And that's really a remarkable thing. So I think eating for life for me would be an expression of eating to feel your best, to actually, I mean, a lot of people, obviously, we know, measure that by weight. I'm talking completely removed from that, like really just feeling your best, being able, whether you're an athlete or someone who casually goes to the gym or someone who takes your dogs for a walk every day, being able to do those things and not be huffing and puffing and feel like you have the energy for your life is a win nutritionally.
Having the energy for your life. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. Thanks.
Can you describe a little bit what your shift your gut therapy method is?
For sure. Thank you for asking. So this is the Shift Your Gut Therapy method is a group program that I developed, and it was derived from the same work that I do with my one-on-one clients. And I just turned it into more of a process because I noticed as I was working with one-on-one clients, we were working on the same pillars, all the time with different people. Obviously, the permutations were dependent on what somebody's current circumstance was, but it quickly occurred to me that, like I've been saying, it's more than just your diet and what you're putting in your mouth that you need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to how we eat. So we spend a lot of time learning about that. We need to look at our activity level. I mean, during the pandemic, then I think you and I talked about this the first time we met. I basically spent, time where I used to work in a clinic and I'd have to go up and down stairs to meet my client at reception or whatever. Suddenly the pandemic hit and we were working from home, and I still am. And here I am sitting with my organs stacked, right? And a lot of people were actually suffering for that from a digestive perspective. So making sure to understand what the right level of movement is for you in your day to help your digestive system, because some movement can actually be detrimental to people with certain conditions, right? So, for example, like high intensity interval training might not work for you if it's causing so much stress on your body that digestion is sort of taking a back seat. We work on sleep, optimizing sleep because there's a very strong connection between digestive function and adequate sleep quality and quantity. We work a lot on obviously the stress reduction piece because, as I've mentioned at the top, when stress is when stress isn't activated, which unfortunately most of us are in some sort of chronic state of stress, low level, high level, whatever, digestion gets sort of downregulated. So optimizing that, rebalancing that through lifestyle habits is really, really important. So basically what I'm describing is a pillared approach. So it's a layered approach to resolving gut health issues. And most of the people I work with are people who do struggle with irritable bowel syndrome or chronic constipation, predominantly in this group. Like it wouldn't be somebody who just suddenly has a little bit of heartburn. They'd probably be somebody I would work with individually. But people who have had like nearly lifelong digestive issues or who have IBS, they've been diagnosed by their doctor with IBS and really don't know where to turn. And again, left to their own devices, I know you probably see this as well. People are mostly focusing on just what should I not eat? What is it that's causing the problem? And the problem is often not what you're eating. It's often how you're eating, even when you're eating. Timing is a major factor. So the Shift Your Gut Therapy program just incorporates all of these different layers, paying attention to providing tactics and strategy around how to kind of, the way I describe it is you're working with a vulnerable system. So we want to reinforce and sort of bolster up, almost like sandbags, how to help the system work more functionally. And again, it's through diet and lifestyle enhancement.
Yeah. And I'm sure something that you probably see with a lot of people is that, as you get diagnosed and then you're dealing with it and you can't quite figure it out, it's so easy to go down these tunnels of like blinders on, tunnel vision, looking at all these little specifics and do this, do that, eat this, don't eat that. And it's like step back and take a look at the big picture and everything else that's going on too, which is kind of what it sounds like, your program is get out of the weeds, just take a step back and focus on everything else that does also matter that you can really forget about, when you get so sucked into any sort of, medical condition and what you should or should not eat for it. It's just really easy to lose sight of what actually matters.
Absolutely. It helps to have guidance. It's kind of like, I would never endeavor to fix my sink if it was blocked. I would have no idea where to start, right? So getting some support is really, really important. And also, we're still at a point, unfortunately, where a lot of people, I think it's changing. I hope it's changing. But like, there are a lot of people who come to see me who tell me like, their doctor basically thinks it's all in their head. I work with a group or I get referrals from a group of 6 family doctors locally. And like, I'm pretty sure I'm just like the last resort. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure how much actual faith they have in somebody getting support because I don't know that they necessarily, with respect, that they always appreciate what their patient, even when diagnosed with IBS, are going through. It's a bit of a quagmire, this whole IBS diagnosis from a medical perspective. So that's sort of, interesting, right? And I think that, as you said, the guidance is important because it takes you to someone's up here looking down at the whole picture. And it is really so multifaceted. And people just, they get consumed with the individual pieces of it. I've had people come to me, a woman who I worked with actually last year, 2021, who, or earlier this year, who actually was end of last year and beginning of this year, sorry, who, not that it matters, who came to me like at her wit's end, literally in tears because she couldn't go traveling. She was retired. She didn't have the confidence to leave her house basically because she couldn't she couldn't depend on her bowels to be predictable, right? Which is a lot of people in that situation fall under that umbrella, and it's awful for anyone who's gone through it. And she actually, it was interesting because she had dealt with this for somewhere near 40 of her 66 years, right? Or maybe a little less, and tried a lot of things and actually had a really, really decent diet, I would say. Like she cooked a lot of her food at home. She was newly retired, had a lot of time to plan and do all this stuff. And in her case, the light what do you call it? Like the light bulb moments had to do with everything to do with how she was eating and her tension, things like that. And it made a huge difference. She's um, totally changed, like totally changed. Like she considers herself having been given her life back. Um, but I want to comment because we're talking a lot about people, or I am, and you referenced it too, people trying to get access to services like ours. And sometimes it's not possible. Like it can be costly, right? And it's not easily accessible for everybody. So I just want to mention that in my case, I have a private Facebook group that anybody with these issues is welcome to join. It's called Shift into Healthy Habits for Digestive Health. I think we're going to be sharing the link to it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the reason I mention that is because, as I said, um, my heart goes out to people because it's not easy to find this type of service or guidance um, in a general medical environment. It's just not, even if you have insurance or that kind of thing. So that's like the type of free resource that somebody might want to consider. And I also have an email series that I put together that's also free. And it's 5 days of snippets of the type of layers that I'm talking about, just to get somebody thinking about these things in relation to their own day-to-day life that many people have found helpful as well. And again, it's free. So just as a matter of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna take a second to talk about that free 5-step email series that we have. So I'm glad you mentioned it. But yeah, that is a free download for everybody listening. And now hopefully that you've have listened to this, those 5 steps might seem irrelevant. They might seem, well, it's not really gonna matter. But try it out, see what happens. Do them each on the day that you get them in your inbox and keep doing them, add them onto each other, and maybe in a week or maybe even less, you might start to see, some things happening. And again, it's a free resource. You don't really need to change a ton of what you eat, probably. It's just a lot of, how you eat and not so much what you eat.
Yeah, it goes into a little more detail of the things we've sort of touched on, some of them today. And again, like I don't know about in a week, but certainly you can get the education you need in that time frame and then work on it. I actually usually encourage people to take on one thing at a time because I think that's why people also get overwhelmed is they get a bunch of different information. They're trying to do all these things at once. And sometimes it's just good to be patient. Like, yeah, you know what? I need to drink more water as an example. That's easy. Guess what? It's not. It's actually not so easy. So take a 4 week time period and set yourself a goal and make that happen, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely. Well, before we go, any last final thoughts, tidbits for our viewers? Nugget of
No,
information?
pardon me.
Then last little nugget of information.
Just the last thing that I said is whether you're going about trying to resolve constipation, bouts of constipation and diarrhea, heartburn, gas, bloating is a big one on your own or not. Try and get reliable information first of all, so get it from a credible source, and then from there, even if you choose to sort of explore this on your own, what I just said is really important. Don't take everything on at once. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to start chewing my food. I'm going to, look at how often I'm eating. I'm going to add more fiber. I'm going to, like, it's overwhelming. It actually is. It sounds simple. It becomes like a full-time job in your head. And I think that's why a lot of people not fail, because there's no such thing as failure, but like kind of get discouraged or they'll try something, and they'll be like, oh, well, it's been 3 days and nothing's happening. Well, no, it's not going to take 3 days. My program is 12 weeks long, for example, right? At a minimum. So really be patient with yourself and know that this is resolvable because oftentimes when you've gone through this for long enough, especially with IBS, you feel like you've tried everything and you don't feel like there is a solution, like there's an end of the road, and there most definitely can be. So I think people need to say that to people because it can feel like there isn't. And I acknowledge that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you again for joining us today. This was really, really good. And I really love, the different angle, instead of always talking about diet, everything else that you can do also to help your gut health. and just your health in general. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jenna. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate this. Thank you.
I love talking with other professionals in the health and mindset space because even when we're covering the same topics, everyone has their own spin. And there are 4 key points from this conversation that I want to leave you with. Number 1, diet and exercise can influence genetic expression. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Your genes do not determine your health. They show what could happen, not what will. Your lifestyle is a far better indicator of your future than your genes are. Number 2, our bodies aren't broken. We interfere and mess them up. Oftentimes, food is not the problem. It is our body's lack of capacity for digestion. God designed our bodies perfectly, and He created the perfect food for us. We are the ones who added the GMOs, the pesticides, and the hustle lifestyle that throws everything off. So before blaming what you just ate, ask yourself, did I just eat real food? And did I eat in a way that lets my body handle it? Number 3, we can become so focused on the minutia that we forget the big picture. Things like sit down and actually chew your food. So before chasing the next gut-friendly diet or protocol, ask yourself, what is the simplest thing I can do right now that might actually help? And finally, at the end of the day, if it is a step in the right direction, it is better than not doing it at all. I don't know if you've noticed a theme with all of these interviews, but every single professional I speak to says that doing something is better than nothing, and don't try to be perfect. And they all say it because we all work with people, and we all know that getting started is the hardest part, and just doing something is better than nothing, even if you do it inconsistently to begin with. Look, gut health is not just about restriction. It is about rebuilding your body's foundation. So I hope today's conversation gave you a fresh perspective and a few aha moments that you can apply. If you're ready for real results, download the Gut Brain Upgrade Blueprint in the show notes. And if this episode helped you rethink your approach, share it with a friend who's stuck in that elimination loop. And until next time, take action, stay empowered, and I'll see you again. Okay, now before you pop off, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the one episode that could change your life. And give us a 5-star review if you learned something new today. If you want to check out all the awesome free guides, templates, and resources I've given away on this podcast, go to theneurodietitian.com/resources. You can grab anything you want, but only if you'll do it. Because information without implementation is worthless. And here at The Empowered Edge, we're action takers, not excuse makers.